Will the pace in this year's Belmont Stakes be slower than the Kentucky Derby? In a word, yes. Now, some of you might think I'm being premature because we don't even know who's in the field at this point. But historically speaking, the pace in the Belmont is a lot slower than the Kentucky Derby, really no matter how you measure it. First, let's start by looking at the median opening half-mile time. In the Belmont Stakes since 2014, so over the last 10 years, 48.49 seconds. In the Kentucky Derby, it's 46.41 seconds. Now, a couple things to note about this. First of all, you might think, well, why are you looking at raw times? You can't do that. Those of you who think that are correct. Generally, you should not look at raw times because you got to equalize the tracks. That's what speed figures are all about. And it kind of amazes me in today's day and age that people don't know that. But Beyer wrote Picking Winners back in 1977, I think it was. So maybe a lot of people haven't read it. But the whole idea behind speed figures is to equalize tracks, to equalize distances. So you can't really look at raw times. Now, back in the day, track surfaces used to vary a whole lot more. In fact, if you look at the history of the Kentucky Derby, there are track conditions that don't even exist anymore. In fact, some of you may be surprised to learn that there was a Kentucky Derby run over a dusty track. You don't see that designation anymore. So things have absolutely changed, and you can look at it a little bit more now. So this data is a little bit more relevant. But I like to look at my speed rations, and my speed rations measure energy expenditure, and they are relative. And what I mean by that is that you can use them in a claiming race, in an allowance race, in a stakes race. It doesn't matter. They're not speed figures. For instance, for Secretariat, going fast early or fast late or fast at any time wasn't really that big of a deal because he was a very fast horse. But it takes its toll on horses that aren't at that level. Using myself as an example, if I ran in the Boston Marathon and I ran the opening mile in 8 minutes, there is no way I'm finishing that race. In fact, I don't think I can run a mile in 8 minutes, but let's say that I could. That is going to be so taxing. That lactic acid buildup is going to be so severe, there is no way that I finish. So somebody else running an 8-minute mile, that might be reasonable. And I don't know. I haven't looked into the marathon, but you get my point that expenditure, energy expenditure is based on your ability. So that's why I think it's a very good measurement. Now, if you look at the Belmont Stakes and the Kentucky Derby that way, you'll see that the average, well, this is actually the median ESR, the median pace ESR, is a -4 in the Belmont Stakes. Now, remember, the lower the figure, the more energy expenditure, the higher the figure, the less energy expenditure. For the LSRs, it's the complete opposite. And obviously, there's a relationship between the two. If you run super fast early, you're probably not going to run late. You're not going to run very fast late. And you'll see that in these figures. So -4 is the median pace in the Belmont Stakes. -12 in the Kentucky Derby. That's about 8 lengths faster or requires 8 lengths more energy, however you want to put it. If you look at the LSRs, that, of course, is the late speed ration, a -3, -5 for the Kentucky Derby. So not that much difference, and I think it speaks to the fact that the Kentucky Derby is really the greatest horse race in America. The Belmont Stakes, a lot of people talk about, the test of the champion or whatever that moniker is. And if you look at the Belmont champions, a lot of them never won again. Look at Saratoga, look at Tara. It really is a different kind of race. Now, this year, of course, is going to be 10 furlongs. It's going to be at Saratoga, so it's going to be a bit different, and we'll get into that in just a bit. So this is why I think, really, regardless of the field, you're going to see a slower pace. So let's look at the Travers Stakes and take a look at the numbers there. This is really, really interesting. First of all, a 47.96 median opening 4 furlongs. So again, quite a bit slower than the Kentucky Derby. Not as bad as the Belmont Stakes, but quite a bit slower than the Kentucky Derby, about 1.5 seconds. Take a look at this, though. The ESR pace in the Travers is actually slower at 10 furlongs at Saratoga, a track that many people will tell you is faster than Belmont, yet it's a -3. So the horses are using a whole lot less energy. By the way, 2 wire-to-wire winners of the Travers, 2 wire-to-wire winners of the Belmont Stakes. Look at the running position of the winners in these races. 4th out by 2 1/4. This is, again, a median figure. Look at this. Exactly the same in the Belmont Stakes. And really, if you look at the ESRs and the pace, -4 pace for the Belmont, -3. The ESR you'll see is a little bit higher in the Travers Stakes. So again, less energy. So it's really the opposite of what a lot of people think. And in fact, I've got a graph that will show you this too. This is kind of fascinating to me. This is the Belmont Stakes versus the Travers Stakes, and it shows the pace. Basically, it plots all the ESRs for the last 10 years and then gives you the trend line. And you'll notice that the Saratoga pace is actually getting slower. The Travers pace is actually getting slower over the years, whereas the Belmont pace is getting faster. And again, this is interesting because most people think that Saratoga is a faster racetrack, and they also think, given the distance, that the pace would be faster. That's not what we're seeing. So that's why I think the pace in this year's Belmont Stakes will be slower than the Kentucky Derby. And I think it's going to favor some of those horses that have been running very fast early. One of the classic examples of this, we're obviously not going to see this year, but Palace Malice, when he ran in the Kentucky Derby, he put blinkers on for the first time. It was a Todd Pletcher trainee, and he just blazes the opening 4 furlongs, -16 ESR. He comes back, he skips the Preakness, comes back at the Belmont Stakes, and winds up wiring the field in that race. I believe he wired it. I don't have the chart in front of me, but he ran much, much slower early. In other words, he was able to ration his speed, and that's really the key to the Belmont, is keeping kind of those even fractions throughout. Anyway, I hope this helps. Hope you all have a great Belmont day. I'll try to put out at least another video. I'll try before the Belmont Stakes. If I don't, whether I do or don't, I hope you have a great Belmont day. Thanks for watching.